Hi there, BookTube! My name is Christina and today I'm back with a review. This time it's a review about a book that unfortunately you won't be able to find in English. It has been translated only in Slovenian and in Portuguese, from what I remember. But the reason why I am still deciding to film a review, even for you international watchers and viewers and friends, is that I believe that the message of this book is very, very important and it taught me some very important things. So I really wanted to share with you my thoughts and my experience of reading this book. I have to bring it back tomorrow to my library. It was one of the very first books that I took from my library here at my little town, and I'm so happy about my choice. I selected this book thanks to a video that I watched from an Italian booktuber that I'm following, and I'm so glad. The name of the book is La mia casa dove sono by Shego, and translated this title would sound something like My home is where I am, and it is very, very relevant to the content of this book. So the author of this book is Shego, and she is an Italian and Somali. Is it Somali, the adjective of a person coming from Somalia? I'm not sure about it in English. However, she's from Somalia, but she is Italian. Her family is from Somalia, and this is her story. This is kind of a very short autobiography with kind of a particular frame that really immediately got my attention, because the story starts with her and her brothers. They are meeting and they are discussing about their hometown back in Somalia and what they can recollect. And from that idea, they start kind of drawing a map of that city. And so she thinks about it and thinks some more, and then she understands that for her, her home, her house is both in Somalia and here in Italy, and that she is a mixture of those cultures, of those stories, of that kind of heritage. And so each chapter is actually a part of story from her, like her family, about her father, her mother, the brothers, and so on, and a part of description of the city in which she lives, and that's Rome. And it's a very interesting kind of mixture to discuss some very important topics. The reason why I decided to pick this book was that it is a book written by a black author who is Italian. And I decided to start from this point, because even if black people are struggling everywhere around the world, I realized that I can access more easily information about black people living in the US, for example, than content dealing with the situation of black people in Italy. That's a country where I live, which is kind of absurd. And so I started searching, and fortunately I found that video by an Italian booktuber who talked about some of the books that she read by Italian black people, or black people who live in Italy. So I thought to start from here, and this was an amazing starting point, because so much of what I read here resonated with me on such a deep level. Not because, of course, of the skin color, but because of some of the things that the author was describing when she was talking about her experience as an immigrant, of what it means to live with two languages in your mind and having to choose which one to talk, what it means to remember a place that will never exist anymore, because you have a memory that's fixed in time and the place changes as people change, and when you will get back there it will never be the same. Moreover, in this case the author is from Somalia, and so there were huge changes, upheavals, revolutions, changes of power, wars, civil wars. So a lot of horrible things happened and are happening there. And this is something else that I really knew little about, so this book helped me there too. So going in order, just to give you an idea, this author speaks about her father, who was actually a politician in Somalia and who ended up being sent away and exiled from his country with his family, and so he arrived in Italy and started building his life from anew, pretty much. And her father, in the chapters in which she discusses her father, we analyze that aspect of political change and what were the expectations and how Italy had a huge impact on her life even before she was born, because Somalia was, if you don't know, was one of the Italian colonies. Italy didn't have that many colonies back in the days, but Somalia was one of those. And what's very absurd about Somalia's situation is that it gained, for a moment, it became, after it was Italian, it became English, and Somalia really hoped for independence, but the international forces and powers decided that this country wasn't ready to be independent, and that meant that they decided for a country to kind of organize Somalia internally in order to make it ready to become an independent country, something like that. And unfortunately, this role was given back to Italy, the same country that was the colonial power that ruled these people for at least 20 years, I believe. So this was a very bad choice, because even if Italy, when it was when Somalia was a colony, it was under I don't know how to tell it actually, how to pronounce it in English correctly, fascismo, so it was a fascist, I believe. It's pronounced like that, I don't remember, oh my god. But anyhow, there was a dictatorship here in Italy, and after, it was not the same, but still the country was the same, the language was the same, everything was the same, and so the people perceived it in a certain way, and this determined the history of that country. So we're following her father, who speaks about it and who addresses the matter, and she addresses the matter too, because she talks about something very specific that I actually realized only while I was reading this book. So one more very important thing for me was that while she was talking about colonialism and Italy, she addressed the fact that other countries that had colonies, like England, like Spain, Portugal, or France, they all, or the Netherlands and so on and so on, they all addressed that matter at a certain point in their history. However, Italy never did it, never done it. What happens here in Italy is that actually the matter of colonialism in Italy is just like usually a short paragraph in all of the historical books, and even at university, if you're not studying particularly that matter, it's kind of brushed off very often, and it's not analyzed, it's not discussed enough. There isn't enough literature about that specific matter. So I felt that it was very important, because when I was studying, since I studied history here in Italy when I was already an adult, I remember it. And for example, in the historical books, it says much more about the colonial past of England rather than what happened during the colonial past in Italy, which is absurd, but it's true. So this was one thing that I thought was very important. The second matter deals with her mother. When she speaks about her mother, she also discusses a couple of very important moments. So she discusses her mother's past, and her mother was born, of course, in Somalia, so she was Somali, and she was part of the nomadic population of Somalia. So she had that kind of cultural heritage, and the importance of, for example, of oral transmission of knowledge, how her mother sang to her and shared with her all of the fables and fairy tales from her like her parents and her tribe and her people, and how that impacted our author nowadays, how the spoken word and the written word became a huge part of her life, because she became an author actually. And then of course the bad side of being part of a tribal and nomadic society, so the horrible things that were done to little girls when they were absolutely underage and without any kind of consent, just because it was part of that culture and that heritage. And nowadays things are changing, but still there is a part of population, old population, that believes that what was done properly. And if you don't know what I'm speaking about, I believe that it's pronounced the same way in English, and it's infibulation, but I'm not sure. I will write it here, so go and check it out. It's horrible, but it's something that exists, and so she addresses that matter too. And then she addresses the matter of being she herself being a teenager and her mother going to Somalia and disappearing there for 2 whole years because war happens. This book was written in 2010, so a little bit before that date, and her mother simply disappeared. And I mean, this is something impactful, and this is something that we imagine only in movies or something far away, but reading someone that lived it and who describes it in your language, in this case in Italian, so for me it's kind of my second language, it has really a different kind of impact. And then her brother, who was left in Somalia for years and was able to meet his family back only later on in his life when he was already a teenager, and the fact that he was the first black man in military, and how it was hard, but also how he overcame that kind of hardship. It was a very, very meaningful reading experience. It was moving in some parts. I've never cried, but it really touched some deep chords in me, because first of all, again, it was a perfect read because of the Black Lives Matter movement, and even more so because it is set in Italy, so it's about the experience of someone who lives in Italy. In this case, however, the book doesn't address exactly the matter of being specifically black in Italy and what happened to her because of her being black, both good and bad things, but it focuses more on her origin and her country of origin in this case. But it was still very, very meaningful. I enjoyed it very, very much. I gave it 5 full stars. I think that I will reread this book in the future. Maybe I will buy it for myself too, because this is something that I want to cherish. Some thoughts are the same thoughts that I had at a certain point in my life, and some experiences are the same that I shared. So I really understand the author on a very deep level in this case, and I just wanted to share with you some of these thoughts and to share with you a part of Italian culture that you, or history that you probably didn't know before. So I hope it at least piqued your interest, and something that all of us can do, even as international booktubers. Of course we can donate, of course we can share and listen and educate ourselves, but even more so, we can try, search and read about the experience of Black people living in our countries, because that's a completely different kind of experience for a person. Everything depends often on a country in which you live. Racism is all over the world, absolutely yes, but it assumes different kind of forms depending on the country in which you live. So I think that to fight it, it's useful to understand it, and to understand it you have to listen to stories of people who live it every day on their skin, on their personal level. And so for me it was useful, and it's just the first book by this author that I read. I already have a list by her and by other authors too, so this is the first step, and I will make much more in the future. I hope that you enjoyed this video, even if it's not a book that you will be personally able to read in the future. I hope that it inspires you to search and reach out to other people and just find more books, more things that can be very useful nowadays, because the world is what it is, but it's our job to make it better, at least a little bit. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye! Ciao!